part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. This latest edition, produced and directed by Jordan Powell. I was out last week because my throat is killing me. I had the sense to rest, even though the throat continues to kill me. I have enough voice to get through this podcast. Unlike a particular situation at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, where the hierarchy refuses to sit QB1 because of his myriad injuries. I come to you in a foul mood, double dose of foul. Saturday in Ann Arbor, the Michigan Wolverines punked the Ohio State Buckeyes. Snapped, 8-game winning streak by Ohio State, or obviously Michigan snapped its 8-game losing streak. Jim Harbaugh got his first win over Ohio State in 6 tries. He was feeling it. I'm happy to say I barely watched any of the game. I was too nervous. Why was I too nervous? Because as a Buckeye fan through and through, I didn't like how good Michigan had gotten. And I was afraid that Michigan was going to not only make it close, but potentially win. Well, Michigan took it to Ohio State. And I know this because I basically followed the game on Twitter because I was out all day, out all afternoon. And Twitter told me that Michigan earned the victory, that it could have been worse. They dominated in every aspect of it, out-coached, out-hustled, out-muscled, out-executed, everything. So I'm not going to give a tip of the cap to Michigan because I just can't do it. It's not in my DNA. But Ohio State clearly has to go back to the drawing board when it comes to defense, because you look at the two most important games that Ohio State played in the calendar year 2021, the national championship game against Alabama and the Michigan game, and they gave up a combined, 94 points and got essentially trucked in both games. So Ohio State head coach Ryan Day, I still have faith in him, as I should, because he's got such a glimmering record, but he has to figure out what's going on the defensive side of the ball. And there probably needs to be an overhaul if this team wants to get serious about contending for a national title again. So that was Saturday. You know, even though I did go to Northwestern, I was born and bred in Northeast Ohio, and I love the Buckeyes. The only time I haven't really rooted for the Buckeyes too much is when they play Northwestern in some kind of sport. But even then, if the Buckeyes are trying to get to a national title game and Northwestern has a bunch of losses in football, I root for Ohio State to win the game because I want to see the Buckeyes in the title game. So problem on Saturday, compounded on Sunday night with the Browns egg laying at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. 16-10 loss to the Ravens. And yes, the Ravens are coached by John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh's brother. So it was a double dose of Harbaugh brothers' pain. Finally, Jim got to join the party because John's had the measure of the Browns for years. So, yeah, it was a very difficult weekend. And as I'm taping, it's Monday afternoon, and I didn't sleep well Saturday night. I didn't sleep well last night because I'm so frosted that the Buckeyes lost and then the Browns lost. All right, so we look at what happened to the Browns primarily. And a couple of weeks ago, before my throat went kaflooey, I had mentioned it coming off of the loss to the Steelers, when the Browns lost to the Steelers 15-10 at home. In what would that be? Week 10, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check. Week 10 was the Patriots fiasco. Yeah, I think that's when it was. After the Browns went to Foxborough and got destroyed 45-7 Bill Belichick, public humiliation of the entire franchise and everything it's about. I said in the podcast and on my radio show subsequent to that game that this is a wake-up call for this organization. This should tell the organization, hey, what we're doing is not working. We need to make some adjustments, if not drastic overhauls. I wasn't calling for the firing of certain people, but I was saying there need to be some changes made if this team wants to be serious about getting into the playoffs, either by the AFC North or the wild card. One of my suggestions was that heading into the Detroit game, Detroit was next. The winless Lions were up next in Cleveland. So you almost have to, you have to win that game. If you don't win that game, then obviously you're not worth anything. And especially because it's at home. I don't want to say I viewed it as an experimental game because you have to take every team seriously, but I thought the changes could be implemented against Detroit, and then you could get comfortable with them and use them for the remainder of the season. And I focused on, number one, that I thought Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, should offload the play calling to Alex Van Pelt. It just seemed to me like Kevin Stefanski had too many balls in the air, too many things flying around him as the head coach, as the guy who's supposed to be overseeing the entire operation, especially on game day, obviously with the play calling. That's when it matters. And so I thought that it would better serve the Browns if Stefanski offloaded to Alex Van Pelt, and with the knowledge that Kevin Stefanski is the veto. He's the guy who has the final say. He could change any call at any moment. He could create a call at any moment in the headset and tell Van Pelt, hey, I want to run this or I want to do that. And Van Pelt would do it. So it's not like by giving the play calling to Van Pelt that suddenly Kevin Stefanski would be unheard from on game day. So I thought that was one change they could make. Another change was Baker Mayfield needed to sit, at least in order to get healthier. Not healthy, because we know he won't be fully healthy until the offseason when he has surgery to repair his damaged left shoulder, and he's got other issues with the knee and the ankle and everything else. But he came out of the Patriots game. He was banged up and messed up and limping and hobbling and all that kind of thing. I said, why don't you sit Bake for Case Keenum? You're paying Case Keenum a lot of money to back up Mayfield. Have Keenum play against Detroit. Give Mayfield essentially 2 weeks to rest up for the Sunday night game in Baltimore. If Case Keenum can't win against the Lions, then what is he doing on the roster? And if you as a team can't beat the Lions with Case Keenum, then you as a team have no right to be good anyway, okay? So I wanted that done. And then the third thing primarily that I wanted done was on the defensive side, I was hoping that Kevin Stefanski would ask Joe Woods to blitz more, that he would ask him to put more pressure on the quarterback with more exotic looks, knowing that Joe Woods is not, that's not his game necessarily, and he picks his spots with blitzes. I wanted to see more of the Miami Dolphins model against the Ravens a couple of weeks earlier, or I think it was just 1 week earlier, where the Dolphins had, 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 guys roaming around in the line of scrimmage, standing up, and then pressure coming from all areas, some guys dropping back into zones. it did a nice job of confusing Lamar Jackson enough, speeding up his clock, speeding up the linemen, and causing confusion along the Baltimore line. And it led to the Dolphins winning 22-10 in a big upset that brought the AFC North back to the pack, or brought the Ravens back to the pack in the AFC North a little bit, because they were still leading the division, but many of us had marked that down as a victory. It turned out to be a loss. So you're thinking, all right, this is good. So those were the three things I was hoping that the Browns would do, primarily. Well, guess what? None of them was done. Not one. Going into the Detroit game, Joe Woods did his similar stuff with his defense. Baker Mayfield played, and Kevin Stefanski called the plays. The Browns wound up winning 13-10, but all was not right in Browns world. And as I said, my throat had crapped out by the end of my radio post-game show that night, so I just couldn't do a podcast. I'm actually glad I didn't, because I would have screamed and yelled and probably gotten laryngitis or something. But none of the three things happened. Joe Woods' lack of exotic blitzing didn't cause a problem at all in the Detroit game, because obviously the Lions only scored 10. And yes, the defense of the Browns, and with Joe Woods at the helm, had a huge advantage because Tim Boyle was quarterback and the Lions are a mess anyway. And I'm not saying even that Jared Goff would have been the answer, because Goff's been terrible for the Lions at quarterback this year. So the bottom line is the defense had an easy mark, and the defense took advantage of it. You didn't need to do anything crazy, and you still held the Lions to 10 points. So I'm not knocking Joe Woods there. I just wish that he would have tried out some stuff against the line. Maybe he would say that he did, but I didn't see it. More pressing, though, was the fact that Baker played and that Stefanski called plays. Mayfield was not good at all. He, against the Lions, sub 10 total QBR. That's a scale of 1 to 100. He had, I think, an 8 point something. Just a terrible game by the Bake Show. Heard some boos late, walked off the field, didn't meet with reporters, created that whole, controversy throughout the week, and Baker versus the fans. And of course, the national media latched onto it, and, they were all over the Bake Show. So that not only did Baker not rest and get healthier for Baltimore, he didn't play well. He played one of the worst games of his career against the sad sack Lions. So it was like a double whammy. And then Stefanski, nope, I'm going to keep calling plays. Well, guess what? He turned in a masterpiece. Not against the Lions, 13-10. I mean, come on. I mean, you mean to tell me that's it? That's all you can produce against the Detroit Lions is 13 points? So I was shaking my head and sitting there going, why is it that this organization refuses to move, refuses to tweak, refuses to change? And I thought about it, and it goes back to something I had said a couple of weeks ago. Intelligent people are by definition stubborn. The higher intelligence you get, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, because when I said by definition, I mean, I think I'm right on this. I think you'll agree with me. The most intelligent people that I know of are the most stubborn people. And when I say stubborn, I'm not saying it as a negative necessarily. The reason the intelligent people are stubborn is because they have the ability to be stubborn. They have the knowledge. They're smart. They often think to themselves, if they don't convey it publicly, hey, I'm smarter than you. So why do I have to take orders from you? Not to say that they, the intelligent people say, I'm better than you. They just say, I'm smarter than you. I'm more intelligent. So why should I have to listen to anybody else who's not on my intellectual plane? And that's where I think the Browns are in this paradigm that they have set up. The Ivy League trifecta of Paul DePodesta in the front office with Andrew Berry, the GM, and then Kevin Stefanski, the head coach. These three guys are Ivy Leaguers. They're brilliant. There's no question. They're brilliant on the street. They're brilliant in the library. They're brilliant when it comes to football. That's not in dispute. But what I think has happened with this team is those three guys in particular have refused to move off of their core principles and their core beliefs and adjust on the fly because they are so confident in their intellect and their brain power. And it's hurting the team. It has hurt the team, and it might very well have sabotaged the Browns' opportunity to make the playoffs. So by not, and I'm not guaranteeing that Alex Van Pelt would have called an awesome game against Detroit, let alone against Baltimore. I'm not guaranteeing that Case Keenum, would have played great against Detroit, but I pretty much am guaranteeing the Browns would have won, no matter who was behind the center. The problem, though, is that it's not whether they would have dominated against Detroit. It's that you would have been able to begin the process and begin the transition to get you ready for the Baltimore gauntlet, which is to say last night's game, then a bye, then Baltimore and Cleveland. Instead, what did we get on Sunday at M&T Bank Stadium, Sunday night? We got another crap fest. Pardon my French. 16-10. The Cleveland Browns lost to the Baltimore Ravens. 16-10. Stefanski called plays. Baker was behind, I don't say under center because of shotgun, but he was behind the center. And Joe Woods did, in fact, mix in a few more exotic looks. And quite honestly, one of them, I hate to admit it, I hate to acknowledge it, but one of them was turned into a touchdown by Lamar Jackson by a spectacular play. Lamar Jackson did what he is capable of doing, escaped the rush, backpedal, and then threw to Mark Andrews in the end zone when the Browns lost coverage of Andrews. And it turned out to be critical. But even with that, if you would have told me going into the game that the Browns defense was going to do the following: 303 total yards allowed, 155 net yards passing, 4 interceptions, and 16 points allowed, I would have said, sign me up all day and twice on Sunday night. You better, all day, every day, and twice on Sunday night. Every single time. If you're going to tell me you're going into Baltimore against that team, the leaders of the division, one of the best teams in the AFC, and you're going to hold them to 16 points, 303 total yards, and intercept Lamar Jackson 4 times, I can't wait for that game to start. But guess what? The Browns came up short. All they needed, it turns out, was 17 points. 17. Think about a few weeks ago, I was referencing the Steelers game. Browns had playing host to the Steelers in Cleveland about a month ago now. Lost 15-10. And when I was watching, let me see, it was week 8. When I was watching the Ravens game last night and taking notes for my post-game show on the radio, I couldn't help but flash back to that Steelers game. It was eerily similar. 15-10 loss to the Steelers, 16-10 loss to Baltimore. Those are the only two times so far that the Browns have played the Ravens or Steelers. The first of two meetings this season. So you're telling me that against the black and blue brothers of the AFC North, the two gold standards of this division, in the two games you played against them so far, you managed a grand total of 20 points. 20 points. That's sickening. It really is. It's gross. For all of the geniuses and I'm not being facetious here. I'm not taking cheap shots when I say geniuses. I mean it. Literal geniuses that the Browns have, both book smart and football acumen. On the sideline, in the booth, in the preparation department, plus all the so-called talent that the Browns have. You mean to tell me you can't score more than 20 total points in two games, one each against the Steelers and the Ravens? And when you realize that all you needed, I mean, it's one thing if you get beat 40-10 in both games, or 30-10 in both games, or 20-10 in both games. But these were two games where all you needed, respectively, against the Steelers was 16 and against the Ravens was 17. That's all you needed. You still couldn't get it. Something is broken and it needs to be fixed. But I'm afraid that this crew is just dug in and will not concede anything. All right, when we return on the other side of the break, we'll do a little deeper dive into what went wrong against Browns at Ravens.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of The Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it, Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hello, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of the Producing While Asian podcast. Join us to listen in on conversations with everyone who identify from producers to non-producers who all are part of the AAPI community. There's all that and more on the Producing While Asian podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
This is Mike Voorhees, co-host of the Swing and a Tribe MLB podcast. If you love Cleveland Indians baseball, then this is the pod for you. We've got you covered each week as we talk about all the games, breaking news, trades, the roster, all things Tribe. You're going to love it. Go Tribe.
Welcome back to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Producer for this show, as he has been for a while now, is the great Jordan Powell. Coming to you, as I said at the top of the show, in a bad mood, foul mood, because the Browns were, well, I was almost going to be graphic here. The Browns were awful offensively against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football, on the way to a 16-10 loss. And for the Browns, it is now 5 losses in their last 8 games, beginning with a 47-42 shootout loss at the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 5. Okay, the offense was really good then, up until when it was winning time at the very end, and they couldn't figure out how to get down the field. But overall, the offense was good against the Chargers. Then the problems really started to hit. The Arizona Cardinals came to Cleveland and punked the Browns 37-14. The Denver Broncos came to town on Thursday night. The Browns won 17-14 with Keenum. Okay, they only scored 17. Denver's defense can be difficult sometimes, but it wasn't exactly a Boku offensive performance. Keenum was serviceable, did his job, as a backup, and the Browns' defense and running game was able to carry the day. Dearness Johnson starring in that one. Then the loss to Pittsburgh, 15-10. You go to Cincinnati for Cleveland and you truck the Bengals, and that's impressive. That really is. 41-16. It really stands as an outlier now. And I think the best way to chalk it up is that the Browns have the Bengals number, and no matter where they play, the Browns feel like they can beat the Bengals and beat them bad, even though it's gone back and forth in the series over the years. But the 45-16 victory at Cincinnati, you thought for a second was a statement game because the Bengals had beaten the Ravens 2 weeks earlier in Baltimore, and then they went to the Meadowlands and lost to the Jets. But the Bengals were still riding high going into that game, and the Browns cut them down to size. But all of the momentum that you would think would come from that type of resounding victory over a division opponent that was front-running in the division, all of it just evaporated virtually in the blink of an eye. At New England, 45-7 loss. Home to Detroit, win 13-10. At Baltimore, lost 16-10. I was not a math major. I will never be good at math. But even I can add up 7, 13, and 10 for a total of 30. 30 points scored by the Browns in the past 3 games. There were plenty of people who thought the Browns' floor was 25 points a game and their ceiling was around 40. The realistic ceiling was around 40. Entering this season with all the talk about the greatness of the Browns' talent and the amazing Kevin Stefanski and the what happened the previous season, 11-5 with 2 playoff games, 1 a victory and 1 a loss. Oh, this is just, this offense is going to do things that you just can't even believe. And if only the defense could come around, and if only the defense could be as good as the offense, then this team is Super Bowl bound. That's what we were told. Well, in the offseason, the front office, with the blessing of ownership, obviously spending the money, brought in defensive pieces in an effort to catch up, if you will, to this vaunted offense. Now we're seeing, though, that the Browns' defense has done a better job overall than the Browns' offense. Specifically, when I look at the last 6 games, held Denver to 14, Pittsburgh to 15, Cincinnati to 16, absolutely got trucked by New England. There's no getting around it. New England did whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted, to the tune of 45 points. Yes, a colossal disaster by the defense. But then rebounded, allowed 10 against Detroit and 16 against the Ravens. So in 5 of their last 6 games, the Cleveland Browns have allowed, let me see, the most they've allowed is 16. 14, 15, 16, 13, or no, at 10 and 16. Yeah, the most they've allowed in 5 of their last 6 games is 16 points. Is the defense perfect? No. Is Joe Woods perfect? No. But this team's problems are on the offensive side of the ball, much more so than the defensive side of the ball. The offense has the vast majority of culpability, not just in the recent run, but especially last night. When the defense gives you 4 interceptions of a former MVP, 4, and all you do with those 4 interceptions is 3 points, that's all you did with those 4 picks if you're the Browns. 3 points. Can't have that. This from stats. The Ravens are the only team in the Super Bowl era to score fewer than 17 points, have fewer than 325 total yards, throw at least 4 more interceptions than the opponent, and still win the game. Teams with those, and you got Jordan Powell shaking his head, as he should. Teams with those numbers, get this, were 275-1 in the Super Bowl era entering Sunday night, regular season and postseason. You can't make this stuff up. We know Stats doesn't make it up. At Stats by Stats, 275-1 in the Super Bowl era. Teams that had held the other team, or no. Teams that went 17 or fewer points, 325 or fewer yards, and at least more 4 INTs than the opponent were 275-1 in the Super Bowl era, regular season and post entering last night. Nice job, Browns. You want me to refrain from using OIC, Cleveland Browns? How can I? Yet another OIC, only in Cleveland. And our buddy Kenny Rhoda on the Press Play Podcast Network does a fantastic job with Michael Regai, the Regai and Rhoda show. Rhoda, in my mind, invented OIC. I don't know of anybody else who had it before he did. He's absolutely right, though. Only in Cleveland is perfect for this town's sports because stuff happens with our teams that doesn't happen elsewhere. Now, maybe it occasionally happens in Chicago or LA or New York or Texas or wherever. But here in Cleveland, it's so prevalent. Nobody can match us for how many times Bizarro World stuff happens. That's why we own, thanks to Kenny's invention, OIC. only in Cleveland. In other words, it's not only in Cincinnati or only in Chicago, or it's not OID only in Dallas or OILA or any of that stuff, OINY. OIC is it. And that stat right there tells you everything you need to know about how crazy this situation is in Cleveland sports. So the Browns, who had all this hype in the regular season, in the preseason, in the run-up to game one, all this hype. Oh, my gosh, this team is unbelievable. Talent overflowing. Well, this group is 6-6. Doggy paddling. The only reason that the Browns are still in it, as it were, is because the NFL is notorious for parity. Some would say mediocrity. That parity is a euphemism for mediocrity. But the only reason the Browns are still alive is because a lot of other teams in the AFC are bopping around 500 or maybe a game above. Incredibly, the Browns can still rescue the season. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that they're going to be able to suddenly rip off 5 in a row to close, or maybe even a 4-1 gets you in, maybe you can get in with 10 wins, I don't know. But you're going to tell me that this team that performed like it did Sunday night and has performed like it has in the past month plus offensively, you're going to tell me that team's going to be able to go 4-1, 5-0 the rest of the way? I'm not buying it. Show me, don't tell me. I don't see the evidence, especially if Stefanski digs in. You finally got some people coming around to my position this week, or even not this week. This week's barely begun, but coming off of last night's game, including the great Doug Lesmerises. Doug Lesmerises, outstanding columnist, Cleveland.com, and the Plain Dealer. He said, hey, it's time. Stefanski should slide the play calling over to Alex Van Pelt. And Doug Lesmerises is a very bright guy, and he's, he analyzes things. He thinks before he writes. And even Doug Lesmerises says Stefanski is overwhelmed on game day. Too many things are happening that he needs to get a handle on. Last night, it wasn't just the offense on the field that was struggling. It was substitutions. It was too many men on the field, too few men on the field, miscomms between special teams and defense and who's doing what. That's all the responsibility of the head coach. Kevin Stefanski needs to lighten his load, give the play calling to Van Pelt with the knowledge that he can override any play call that Van Pelt makes. He can listen on everything. He can be attentive to things. He can go to the bench and talk to guys, and he can wander around the sidelines and talk to individuals. I'm almost guaranteeing it would help him as a head coach. How do I know this? I've never been a head coach. I know it because I've listened to former NFL head coaches who said they wish they would have offloaded their play calling long before they did. But these coaches knew that they'd gotten hired because of their offensive acumen, so they felt like they had to call plays. And then they realized, you know what, they can still have a huge hand in the game plan, and they can make calls on game day, but also oversee the organization and oversee the on-field operation, the game day operation much better if they didn't have that pressure. Kevin Stefanski has to be thinking about play calls the entire game, not just when his team's on offense. He has to be thinking about play call. What am I going to call next? What am I going to do next? What package? Well, what grouping? It's hard to do all these jobs, even for somebody as smart as Stefanski. But it doesn't appear like Stefanski is going to back off of his position. Again, back to my original point, intelligent people tend to be as stubborn as anybody out there because they believe in their brains. Baker Mayfield. Of course, he played and he didn't play well. Yet another stink bomb from Baker. Not as egregious as Detroit, but it was bad. 18 of 37, 247, 1 TD, no picks, 2 sacks, 45.0 total QBR. So he ranks in the bottom, I think, 6 or 7 in the league through 12 weeks in total QBR. Baker lost a fumble. A couple of the balls that he threw could have been picked. He just wasn't good again. Would Case Keenum automatically have been better? I don't know. Nobody can say that for sure. What we do know is Case Keenum is healthy. And what we do know is that Case Keenum has a bit of an NFL resume, and he was pretty darn good for the Vikings a few years ago. He's capable. But to me, when I'm watching Mayfield, I'm looking at a guy that just isn't capable of doing much. You can't convince me that the Ravens coaching staff and players lost any sleep on Saturday night or even naps on Sunday afternoon preparing for Baker Mayfield. There's nothing that the Ravens saw from this year's tape that made him go, you know what, we're nervous now. He's going to do this or he's going to do that. He might do this. He might do that. No. Last year, okay, yeah, last year was a good year for Baker Mayfield and included a shootout against Lamar Jackson. But that seems like 100 years ago. This year is what we're talking about. And this year, Baker Mayfield has, by and large, stunk. How little respect did the Ravens show for Baker? Well, they stacked the box. The famous 8-man box. Ravens put a bunch of guys in the box and said, we're going to take away Chubb and Hunt as best we can, and we're going to dare Baker Mayfield to beat us. And Baker Mayfield didn't even come close to beating him. As painful as it is to say, well, the Browns offense, if the offense would have scored 17, they would have won. 16-10, in some respects, felt like 36-10 because this offense was so bad. So Mayfield has another bad game, and he obviously isn't right physically, even though we were told, in the practices this week, this is as good as he's looked in a long time. Oh, really? Okay, well, oops. And what I've always said about players who are injured or hurt, banged up in the NFL, number one, everybody is. Every team's got problems with injuries and illnesses now in the era of COVID. And number two, you have once you suit up and play, you're judged on what you do on the field. Once you are cleared to play, then you shouldn't be everything can't be run through a prism of, he's injured. What do you expect? He's injured. No, you judge them on their feet, on their performance. And Baker Mayfield just hasn't been good. Nowhere near good enough to help this team get to the playoffs. And you think about the Ravens game, fourth quarter. The Browns scored their only touchdown late in the third quarter. By the way, a terrific catch by tight end David Njoku as he scraped the ball off the ground, and it needed to survive like a 5-hour review. So in one respect, David Njoku bailed out Mayfield for a low ball with that touchdown catch. But it came in late in the third. Cut the deficit to 13-10. Fourth quarter, winning time for the Cleveland Browns. Time to win the game. Fourth quarter was a one-score game throughout. Deficit obviously never got bigger than 6. It was as low as 3. The Cleveland Browns had 3 possessions in the fourth quarter. 7 plays, 26 yards, and punt. 3 plays, 5 yards, and punt. 4 plays, 7 yards, turnover on downs. Grand total in the fourth quarter against Baltimore, in a game you absolutely needed to win. I'm stopping just short of saying must win, but you really needed it. 14 plays, 38 yards in 5 minutes and 44 minute time of possession. 14 plays for 38 yards by your supposedly amazing offense in the fourth quarter when there was no more than a one-score game. That's just absolutely inexcusable. And what it should do is cause Kevin Stefanski to look in the mirror and go, you know what? We got to make some changes. Even though I believe in my system and I believe in my brains and I believe in my play calling, something's got to change. You can't have that kind of a paltry output on the road against the top team in the division when you're trying to get there. And that's all you get is 14 plays for 38 yards in the fourth quarter. And that last possession, I mean, what a joke. 4 plays for 7 yards. You don't even get a first down. Now, it was a tall order to expect the Browns to go 75 yards in 70 seconds, because there was 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the clock. No timeouts. 1:10 left. You're at the 25, 1st and 10. The expectations the Browns were going to be able to go down the field and score were limited. I grant you that. It was going to be a very difficult task to go 75 yards in 70 seconds with no timeouts. But you got to go more than 7 yards in 4 plays in a possession that lasted 22 seconds. 22 seconds. They didn't even get anywhere close to midfield to give themselves a chance at a heave into the end zone. That's almost impossible to do. I would dare say even the Detroit Lions could figure out a way to go 25 yards in a minute to get you to the 50-yard line with 10 seconds to go, and you got a chance at a quick out for 10 and then a throw into the end zone or just one heave into the end zone. The Browns couldn't even get into position to throw a ball into the end zone. What does that tell you? And the Ravens on 4th down sent the house. They had zero coverage. They were daring the Browns to win the game. They sent the house. But how in the world on 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down can't you gain 7 here, 12 there, 15 here, 10 there, out routes? I've seen so many quarterbacks do that in the less than 2-minute drill. Does it always result in a touchdown? No. Does it always result in a field goal? No. But at least these other offenses move the ball in a span of 1 minute and 10 seconds. The Browns managed 7 yards. They did the same kind of thing against Kansas City. I want to say not once, but twice in the division series game. I mean, the division series, thinking of the Guardians. The divisional round game, last opportunity for the Browns. I think it was resulted in. I think they turned it over on downs, but they didn't go anywhere. They didn't go very far. And then against Kansas City, the opener this season, the last possession, I'm almost sure was a pick by Baker, but that possession didn't last long. didn't result in much. What are you doing? And it'd be one thing if Kevin Stefanski clearly came from a defensive tree, if he came from a defensive mold. That's not where he came from. This is a guy who was advertised as an offensive mind. His whole thing is offense. Supposed to be. That's the best you got? 10 points against the Steelers and 10 points against the Ravens? The two gold standards of the division? Stefanski, he's in the line of fire now, figuratively, sports-wise speaking, as he should be. I mean, the bloom is off the rose, the honeymoon's over, any of those cliches. Last year, I was warned by some people, hey, don't buy too much into Stefanski because the Browns feasted on a relatively easy schedule and they had a lot of things go their way, and that's how they got to 11-5, and they won a playoff game and everything else. Be careful about crowning Stefanski. He's got to prove it when teams have a year to study him, and when he starts playing better teams. Well, guess what? This year, Kevin Stefanski is struggling, to loosely quote Joe Namath. And I've listened to the defense of Stefanski saying, well, what is he supposed to do with a quarterback who's playing as poorly as Baker? Yeah, that's fair. And what is he supposed to do with receivers who can't get open, can't get separation? Fair. Happened last night. Receivers got virtually no separation, at least as far as we could tell, other than Jarvis a few times on his birthday. But, you know, there's excuses for everybody. You can make excuses for Stefanski. You can make excuses for Baker. You can make excuses for the O-line and the receivers and the running backs. But I'm tired of excuses. It doesn't matter, especially at this point of the year. Results are what matter. And the results from the Browns offense have been pathetic by and large and have sunk this season to this point. Again, still a modicum chance of rescue, but to this point, it doesn't look good. And I think about all the talent that this Browns offense was supposed to have. Well, where is it? The receivers. Who's a star on the Browns receiving corps? Nobody. The closest thing to a star you had was Odell Beckham Jr., but we didn't even know if he was a star, if he was star worthy anymore, because he was injured and he hadn't put up numbers close to what he did in New York with the Giants. But Beckham wanted out and got his wish and is gone. So, oh well. You got to move on from him. Who else though? Who are the stars? Jarvis Landry? I mean, I like Jarvis. I love Jarvis as a player. He's a warrior in the sports sense, in the figurative sense. He's the guy. He's a type of guy you want on the team. You win with Jarvis Landry, but he's not a star. He's a solid NFL receiver who, by the way, had a really good game last night on his birthday. Happy 29th birthday belated to Jarvis. He's not a star, though. And nobody else in that receiver room is a star. Tight ends. Who's an awesome tight end on the Browns? Nobody. Running backs. Yes. 2 stars. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. But guess what? They were rendered meaningless, useless last night against the Ravens when the Ravens stacked the box and said, we're going to take away the run. Quarterback. Is he a star? No. He hasn't proven to be. Looked like he was making strides last year, but even then he wasn't, all world. It wasn't like you looked at his season last year and said, this guy is a Pro Bowler waiting to happen, or he's an annual Pro Bowler, an annual All-Pro. He had a good season, a good bounce-back season. but he hasn't proven to be an elite quarterback to this point in his fourth season. He's got time, but just because he was drafted number 1 overall in 2018 doesn't automatically mean he's ticketed for stardom. Offensive line. Oh, the offensive line. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Look at all these offensive line guys. They're so good. And they get paid too. And they're maulers. Okay, I like them. I like the individual pieces. I like the line as a whole. I'm sure Pro Football Focus loves the line. But guess what? That line was, for lack of a better term, neutered by the Baltimore Ravens last night. You think the Ravens front and the Ravens 8-man box was concerned about the Browns' vaunted O-line when it blasted through various creases and holes and shut down the Browns' running game? When it's money time, which is to say, in my mind, against the Ravens and the Steelers, the Browns' offensive line doesn't look so great. So this idea that the Browns have all this talent, oh my gosh, I disagree. I'm not saying they're a bad team. I will say they're underachieving, but I'm not going to say that they're underachieving to the extent that, it's so bad because they have all pros at every position. That's just not accurate. And where the Browns were concerned last night, okay, so you have 2 really good running backs in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but you recognize that the Ravens are committed to taking away what Chubb and Hunt do best, which is running the football. However, you have a wild card with Kareem Hunt, and that is his pass catching ability. You don't have that with Nick Chubb, but you have it with Hunt. Guess how many passes Kareem Hunt caught last night against the Ravens? If you guessed 0, you would be correct. The big goose egg for Kareem Hunt. 0 catches for 0 yards, 0.0 yards, everything, yards per catch, 1 target. That was a screen pass that got blown up. Kareem Hunt, if he's not going to run the ball, should be lining up in the slot, or he should be coming out of the backfield on arrow routes or flares or just, anything you can get dinks and dunks to Hunt with and let him go to work, especially when your receivers aren't getting open. Kareem Hunt is a matchup problem out of the backfield with a linebacker, or as I said, in the slot if need be. He is a matchup problem. Use him in the pass game. Inexplicably, he's targeted 1 time. I like Nick Chubb, but he's not, as we said, not a pass catcher. How is it that Nick Chubb has 2 more catches than Kareem Hunt against the Ravens? Chubb caught 2 passes for 23 yards. So it's just head scratcher after head scratcher after head scratcher with this team. It's really, really frustrating because you feel the season slipping away if it hasn't slipped away already. And, I'm looking at this too. Jake Burns, one of the guys I respect immensely as far as film breakdown. He's an expert on it. He truly is. He's one of the best in the country at breaking down football film and football tape. Jake Burns, he works for the Orange and Brown Report, so he specializes in the Browns. His tweet from today: there is no, quote, change this play to something entirely different, audibling from Baker. Think about it. How many times have you heard Baker Mayfield audible? Is he that committed to Kevin Stefanski? Are they that in lockstep that there's no way that Baker Mayfield's going to change a play when he doesn't like what he sees? He almost never audibles. So I don't know. I'm sorry for ranting and raving, but The Browns fan in me is thoroughly frustrated, and I don't blame anybody else in Browns Nation, Browns world for being frustrated because, you know, it's shaping up to be another season that gets flushed. Oh, by the way, last 18 games for the Cleveland Browns, 9-9. 8-8 in the regular season, 1-1 in the playoffs. And in those 18 games, by my count, they've scored 20 or fewer points 10 times. 10 times. In their last 18 games, they've scored 20 or fewer points. It's unacceptable. That would be unacceptable if Freddie Kitchens were the quarterback calling the plays. The head coach calling the plays. This is Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt and Bill Callahan and all the incredible minds that get together to put together the Browns offensive game plan. And that's what you're getting in the last 18 games. 9-9. 20 or fewer points scored in 10 of the 18. Come on, man. All right. That's a wrap on today's podcast. Appreciate you listening very much so. And thank you very much to Jordan Powell for producing and directing. We'll talk to everybody soon.